Hey, it's James from 4x4 Earth, and welcome to episode 59 of the 4x4 Earth podcast. The 4x4 Australia 4x4 of the Year.
Join James from 4x4earth.com as he learns all there is to know about four-wheel driving, camping, fishing, and getting out and exploring our great country on the 4x4 Earth podcast.
Ladies and gentlemen, our first episode for the year. Pretty excited to be getting this one underway. Really excited to have back a special guest. We've got Jason Locke, who was one of the judges in the 4x4 Australia 4x4 of the Year. So we're going to get a bit of the background information on the process for judging what the 4x4 of the Year is. Jason had a pretty cool job with this. He got to drive a whole heap of four-wheel drives in a whole heap of different locations. So without further ado, let's get into the interview. Hey Jason, welcome back to the podcast.
Thanks, James. It's been a long time since I've been here with you. I've been listening to lots of your guests and the good topics since I've been here, but always good to be here and have a chat to you and the listeners.
So what have you been up to?
Well, one of the most exciting things I was actually a judge in the 4x4 Australia of the Year test for 2022. It was a great honour to be chosen as a seasoned industry expert. I feel like I'm an old man now, going out there with judges that have been doing it for 30 years. A lot of my peers out there too, but it was a great week and a half long event.
So the 4x4 Australia 4x4 of the Year, what's the history of that?
Oh, it started back in the 80s with Ron Moon, who was one of very interesting guest on the podcast earlier when he was the editor of 4x4 Australia, back when GQ Patrols were brand new. They actually did a testing even before that. I think mid-80s it came out. And so 35 odd years of testing the new vehicles and what's out there and what's the best out of a manufacturer under a whole guideline of criteria. So there's bushability, their off-road ability, how tough they are, and just take those standard off-the-showroom vehicles out into the outback, all conditions, see how they stack up, and give you some insight into the readers of the magazine and our listeners to what stacks up out there in the new car showroom.
So what are the categories that the vehicles get tested in?
Oh, lots of those too. So it was very interesting. We actually started down at Anglesey at the Lynn Fox Proving Ground. So it's actually started as the International Truck Proving Ground back in the 50s or 60s, and it's had a lot of money spent over the years. So you see multinational companies like Bosch use it as a ABS proving ground. There's a truck proving ground. There's high-speed bitumen. There's replica of all types of roads from around the world. So it was very good to actually try out these 18 vehicles in controlled conditions where you could swap between them and drive them in all kinds of conditions. So we spent 3 days down there at Anglesey. I've been fortunate enough to do work for Land Rover down there and BF Goodrich Tyres and other people down there as well using it as a demo. So I'm pretty familiar with the tracks and what's down there. But it was actually the first time I've actually done a back-to-back comparison there on a whole lot of vehicles. Very interesting in controlled conditions to see what these vehicles will do. And having 18 vehicles lined up to do the one obstacle, and we could all have a chance to drive them and see them and then be outside the vehicle and watch how they go there as well. So it was good controlled conditions before we headed out back.
So what's the entire process then? What do you do with each of the vehicles?
So we actually there was score sheets, criteria, we kept the scores to ourselves, even amongst conversations amongst the judges. We were given some criteria on there. So starting through the list, value for money, so what the vehicle has, vehicle's equipment level, safety features, and its price relative to direct competitors. So it doesn't always make, so like the Mercedes G-Wagon, one of the vehicles there was $250,000 car, beautiful car, very capable off-road and on, but very expensive out there too. So value for money, does it stack up there? If it might have been a $160,000, $170,000 car, that might have been value for money when you compare it to there as well. Some of the other categories, breaking new ground, so advancements in technology and design, and the big one in the room, everyone's going, the Cruiser's dropped its V8 mighty engine for a V6 for a smaller motor, which, quite frankly, outperforms the V8, runs rings around it. So breaking new ground, having that smaller motor with more power, more torque, more drivability. While the purists will be upset about it, but it actually works and does a lot better. Lots of safety features and other things in there as well are taken there for breaking new ground. Having power outlets in the back, things like that, which comes into bushability we'll get to next. So yeah, the bushability. How well is the vehicle equipped for off-road travel? So there's some great vehicles there. The Volkswagen Amarok, by Walkinshaw, it had upgraded suspension, upgraded seats, and all kinds of things on the vehicle, but it had a highway-focused tyre. So that wasn't going to stand up, out at the back of Burke, for want of a better word, out there off-road. Wasn't going to work that well, and did let it down at Anglesey too, under the controlled conditions. While a beautiful car on the road, with the right set of tyres on it, it'd actually be an awesome, and I think it would have been up there as one of the finalists to go away. But on that ground, it was counted out. And the other one there's two other categories there. Built tough. How strong will the vehicle be? Will it survive on those corrugations? Will it work out there for bush touring? We all know a lot of these vehicles and some of the more softer roaders, SUVs, they might be fine for an occasional dirt road, but are they going to survive, a week out of Broken Hill, camping and living out of there too? So we put the vehicles through the test for that. And again, bushability. So how well is it equipped for off-road travel? Again, tyres, the tools that are in there, everything's in there. And remembering these cars are standard. So we camped out of them, lived out of them, like Gatura does, with no modifications. So we did have a support vehicle there, 2 support vehicles with photographers, and also we had some catering crew. We were pretty busy along the days. It was long days, hot days, camping out of vehicles, swags and stretchers, and it was a pretty rough camp compared to what a lot of people are used to. Lots of hours, lots of heat, but we got it out there and got it done. So it was a really good test of the vehicles. But the main thing was, and it took me a bit to recalibrate as well, we're not doing how well will these vehicles be when they've been to a modification shop and $15,000 spent on them, and we tailor them to our needs. But this was how they went standard, looking at recovery points, spare tyres, things like that, the tools in there, even the power outlets in there too. So we had some fridges, but no dual batteries or anything else like that in the vehicles. This was actually how they came. So very interesting, and being able to do the direct comparisons on the same obstacles, same drivers, and be able to do it straight away, and not remembering what it was like driving the vehicle 3 days ago. And then we rotated through the vehicles about every hour when we're out in the bush as well. So it was actually really good to go through and do this. But again, remembering it's how the vehicles come out of the showroom.
So what were the vehicles that you had?
So going through the list of the vehicles, mentioned some of them so far. So we had the Mercedes-Benz G400d, the latest thing of the G-Wagon. They look very similar to how they came out in 1984, that model shape, but it's a pretty new car underneath there. So all the latest gadgets, radars, and its off-road ability was actually supreme. But again, a very expensive car, $233,000 plus on road costs, which probably means a $260,000, $270,000 car. So value for money. It's pretty hard to go that too. It had a lot in there, and its off-road ability was great, but very interesting to drive. A lot of the testers, especially some of the more senior ones, had some trouble trying to work out the controls, trying to get the car out of park, and the car won't start if the door's open. So as you're doing things and trying to get the car running, you got the door open, you're talking to someone, the car won't start. So it took a bit to figure some of those things out, but it's just as you're getting used to. And this is what always happens when you're testing cars in and out of different cars. You get used to your own cars, but very capable vehicle, very sure-footed on the road, and very surprising how its off-road ability there on the tracks there as well. We had the Land Rover Discovery with the new straight 6 petrol motor, which is an absolute awesome car. You know, my history with Land Rover, being a Land Rover instructor, I drive one myself, so it was the latest iteration. Fantastic vehicle, very capable off-road. When it goes there, let down by some 20-inch tyres, wheels on it, and highway tyres. So it did everything very well in off-road, but its risk of taking it off-road, out into the desert, under the rocks out the back of Aldi Station, out the back of Broken Hill, we're worried about the tyres. So unfortunately for that car, it would have been a contender, I believe, but didn't stack up with its tyre choice on there, which suits what 99% of people do with them. But as an off-road tourer, those wheels and tyres, and nothing available as an option from Land Rover, you've got to go back to the aftermarket to do that. And again, it wasn't something that we can go and do there as well. Next vehicle is the Land Rover Defender. A lot of talking about this new Defender. Everyone's been waiting for it since 2016. Bit of a spiritual carry-on from the Discovery 3 and 4. The big boxy car with everything in there. Very capable off-road. Had some semi-all-terrain tyres on there as well. Goodyear Wrangler on there. Was a good tyre on it. Actually made the final 6, which we went away with. Very capable car, and just the latest iteration of all the Land Rover technology there with all its road modes, its sand modes. It was my choice of vehicle for when I had to do a recovery in the sand. It got the things done, pulled everything out there, built-in tow points, so bushability, lots of points there as well. Stood up really well. Next vehicle we had was a Chevrolet Silverado. They actually sent us the LTZ model. We're actually looking for, I think it's the Trail Boss model, which had more an off-road tuned suspension in there, more off-road orientated tyres, but unfortunately not available. All these vehicles, there's COVID supply issues, supply and demand issues. Sometimes maybe the marketing department or someone who's arranged the vehicles will send the wrong vehicle more than the spec, but you can only test what you're given, and that's what was there. So that was let down with its road-orientated tyres and suspension there as well. So on those corrugated roads, it was a big handful, but everything else it did pretty well. And just the size of it and its ramp overs, didn't really get off into the off-road areas, couldn't go there, would have damaged it in that as well. So unfortunately it was out, but a very impressive vehicle, but didn't really suit the criteria for the test. New Land Cruiser 300 series. We had the VX there, which is a luxury, just one under the Sahara. Beautiful vehicle. But again, would have liked to have seen the base model 300 series, just more in the price point and modified for bush touring, but none on the press fleet or none available at the time. Or the GR Sport, I think the top of the line one, twin lockers, bit like a Raptor with all the off-road goodies on there as well. But Toyota supplied the VX, but very, as we touched on it before, that new V6 motor, and the vehicle's a lot lighter than a 200 series, so it actually stood up really well. Loved driving it and outperforms the 200 series in a straight line in the bush dirt road, so it's a very impressive vehicle. And then we had the Jeep Gladiator Rubicon, which was tested the year before as well. Awesome package. And I went in, you try not to have too many thoughts about it before or preconceived ideas. I was a bit worried about its off-road, its on-road ability with its live axles and the way it's all set up as an off-road vehicle, but it surprised me on the high-speed road and driving it on the road down there and back. Very good vehicle. And I think, unfortunately, immensely capable off-road until it came to its ramp over, its belly, really long wheelbase. So it got stuck everywhere, couldn't get up over things, and relatively expensive in its amount of payload. Actually took it out of being a contender for the top vehicle, but drove a lot better than I was expecting. Very good vehicle. I'd consider having one in my garage. But again, need some aftermarket, a little bit of suspension lift and up one in the tyre size would have helped it a lot, but that wasn't what we're testing again. A very good vehicle. Then we had the Toyota Hilux SR5, actually won the test last year. Having had the first generation of this shape Hilux, it's come a long way over. It's there, the traction controls, the power out of that motor is it's been tuned better, some enhancements in it compared to how it was at the start. So still a very good vehicle and in the running for the outright ute again. Then we had a Ford Ranger in the XLT with the 2-litre, the 4-cylinder, the bi-turbo motor. Again, I've had 6 or 7 Rangers or previous model BT50s with the 3.2 motor. I would have liked to have that one there. More the judge's favourite, but still a very good ute, and just shows you how good that Ranger T6 platform is, even though it's going to be superseded later in this year. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens next year with the new Ranger and the new Ranger Raptor coming out. Which gets us to, then we had a Ranger Raptor, very capable vehicle, all-terrain tyres, so lots of ticks there. But the lower tow capacity on that, fit for purpose, came back into it a bit, the pricing, so it missed out on going in the final 6. But a very good vehicle, very bushworthy as well. Next we had Nissan Navarro in the Pro 4X Warrior, which is really good to see Nissan doing vehicles more off-road ready, and I guess all the accessories you put on the vehicle. So it's been really good to see the car companies doing that, already having a bull bar on it, more suitable tyres, suspension tune in it there as well. And judges, when we're talking about it, the suspension tune wasn't quite there. Ability, pricing, everything else like that, again, it missed out. It was pretty close, but it didn't make it to the final contenders. And along those lines was the Volkswagen Amarok, which is actually a W580, which is done in conjunction with Walkinshaw. So the old HSV have taken their take on a ute. They have fantastic seats, retrimmed, Lots of things in the vehicle. The suspension was really good in it. It did come at a price though, so you're talking about a $72,000 plus on roads for a ute. But it had a highway-orientated tyre, so again, wouldn't stack up. I believe, my personal belief, and most of the other judges were, the right set of wheels and tyres on that car would have made it a really good package out of the box. So unfortunately, didn't make it there. Then favourite, we're seeing a lot of these out touring. Lots of them tradies buying them. The Isuzu D-Max. Very good ute, very good improvement over the previous model. We actually had another one there, a long-term test for the magazine, which suspension, tyres, bar work, everything on it, like he set up for an Outback Tourer. But that Isuzu D-Max and the MUX, both good vehicles for price point, but out of the box they lacked a little bit. Couldn't get over some of the obstacles, like as a ute, it wasn't as capable as the Hilux or the Ranger. So it came up well, but not quite, no cigar there. Then we had Nissan Patrol in the TI, the big V8, fantastic vehicle, direct comparison to the 300 series, it's $40,000 to $50,000 cheaper for, a comparative vehicle. So good value for money, very, very good car, a lot of fun. The fuel usage when we went through on it, was significantly higher than the others, but, that $40,000 or $50,000 is a lot of fuel over the time, so that made it through to the finals. The Mitsubishi Pajero Sport, which is an Exceed trim, again, we're seeing those as a very well big seller, lots out there with families, but off-road ability, it just didn't get there going off-road on these tracks, so it was ruled out. Very much improved over the previous model, but still needs there as well. So, an under $50,000 car was very good, but didn't make some of those criteria, so that missed out as well. The Toyota Prado, it's been an evolution. That body shape's been around for a long time, but just the tuning in it, the suspension tune in it, its off-road ability, being able to do that, it just did everything well and made it there, made it through the final. And I guess my other note on there as well, talking to a lot of the farmers out the back of Broken Hill, and if you're called into the Silverado pub, when everyone's having an evening meal in there, Prados were the number one car in the car park. And lots of the farmers were saying, the Land Cruiser's become too expensive. The Prado does everything well, bit smaller, and its price point on there too. So sales figures reflect it. And I know in the aftermarket, looking at the number of bull bars that are sold for them, goes out there. It's still a very good car. We touched on the Isuzu MUX before. Again, for its price, very good, but off-road, it just didn't quite make it, and the powertrain, everything else like there, it was a cheaper vehicle than an Everest or everything else there as well. So that one, while it was very good, everyone spoke well of it, but it didn't make it when you compared it to the criteria. The SsangYong, the Rexton, that was a surprise for a lot of people. Very good value for money. What it did was good towing capacity, entry-level pricing, but it lacked in suspension travel, and its traction control was pretty slow to react. So by the time you tried to get it out of an obstacle, the other vehicles had just got on with the job and got up the hill. So unfortunately, that one didn't make it through either. And then the Ford Everest was the next vehicle we had. Solid handling, did everything well. Again, showed you how good that T6 platform has been from the Ranger. But we ended up with a titanium, so it actually had 20-inch tyres on it. Again, the bushability wasn't there. And it was almost $80,000 as the top line Everest. So it was up there in price. So value for money, the car that we had for testing didn't stack up. So that was the 18 cars. So we narrowed it down to 6 vehicles from there after 3 days of around at Anglesey at the Linfox Centre. Got them through to put their paces. So we loaded them up with camping gear and we headed off to the bush.
Gold. So what were the 6 finalists then?
Was the Toyota Hilux SR5 and the Ford Ranger XLT. So that was the two utes there for us to compare on, and a mid-size ute. Then there was the under $100,000. We had the Toyota Prado VX and the Nissan Patrol TIL. And then in over $100,000, we actually had the Land Rover Defender 110 with its straight 6 diesel motor and the new Toyota 300 Series Land Cruiser VX. So 6 very different vehicles to head out bush, head north up through the desert, up into outback New South Wales. Got to go out and camp along the Darling and see very flooded conditions, some really good roads, lots of sand, lots of outback touring. So it was a good mix of the vehicles, get them through some really deep sand along a lot of the trucks in the big desert before we headed out to Broken Hill and LD Station, where we really got to put things through their paces again again, in a controlled environment and doing the same track and being able to do it. All the judges, so we had 6 judges along with us. It was a pretty good time to introduce the judges that were alongside with us. So we had editor Matt Rodonicus, who'd been an editor of 4x4 Australia and a four-wheel drive journalist for a long time. Ron Moon, who'd been a guest on the podcast before. That was a couple of years ago. It was a very popular episode, James, wasn't it?
Yep, it certainly was.
Yeah, so Ron's been there, done it, written the book on it, between Africa, America, travelling around the world. I first met him in the early 90s, where I thought he was an industry veteran back in the day, and he was younger than I am now, so I guess it puts into perspective, and I might be a grown-up soon. And then we had Dean Mello, that was a previous editor of 4x4 Australia, one of the most consistent drivers I've ever seen. So when you're doing photo shoots and you're getting having to put a car in the same spot and drive it in the same way, different cars, put it on a 50-cent coin pretty much. Dino actually really had that, was really good. And 2 younger journos that have been around, I've spent a lot of time with them over the years, read lots of their work, was Evan Spence, who's with 4x4 Australia, and Dex Fulton, that's been around, lots of online presence and that as well, and he's doing some work for 4x4 Australia and myself. So very wide experience. We're all pretty good on the spanners and camping and being able to recover a vehicle safely, be able to get out of there, was good. We didn't have to get too many spanners out, but we had quite a few flat tyres and snatch straps out for recoveries, and we had a support vehicle, one of the a Patrol towing there, which bent a tow bar tongue and had some tyre issues. So there was a little bit of stuff there, but it was good. Had smaller tools than I normally take, less gear, but but between all the cars, we all had our camping gear. We were living out of the vehicles, fridges. Everyone had swags and stretchers, so we carried everything. We were self-sufficient. So we did that while we had some good base camping, but we also camped on the side of the track. So it was really good to experience these vehicles.
Nice. Before we get into the testing for the final 6, you've mentioned suspension quite a few times.
Yep.
How much of a difference would it have made for some of those vehicles if they'd gone out? Like, what would people need to do after buying those vehicles if they're going to do a bit more than just, the occasional bush trip? What do they need to be thinking about modification-wise for suspension?
Well, number one, a lot of them, most people think about suspension just to get an increase in ride height. So a legal kit, up to 50 millimetres, lifting the vehicles, gives them a bit more clearance. We said that about the Gladiator, which bellied out. So that's usually one of the first things you do, but it's also to carry the load. So lots of these vehicles, they're set up for towing or just the loads you carry in the vehicle. The standard suspension tune won't carry the weight or handle the conditions. So corrugations, you get a lot of vehicles will get shock fade, things built for a price, and also built to a standard to that too. So that's where you see like a Raptor, with a big dollar like a Fox shock absorber in there, comes with that, which is nice to have if you're buying that too. And also the Navarro, the Pro Warrior with its upgraded suspension, also the Walkinshaw enhanced Amarok had those in there, which a standard vehicle wouldn't have worked as well. And I guess I noticed that in the Hilux and in the Ranger, on the whoop-de-doos out there in the desert, is going over the sand dunes and over there too. You actually noticed a bit of shock fade in the standard vehicles, which didn't come in some of the other vehicles. I think for long distance touring, an upgraded suspension kit is high on the list.
We'll leave the podcast there and we'll come back next week for the next installment in our story of the judging for the 4x4 Australia 4x4 of the Year.
4x4earth.com is used by over 200,000 people every month to find great tracks, organise trips, and find out how to better enjoy exploring the great outdoors. There's over 1,000 tracks and 300 campsites ready for you to explore. So check out 4x4earth.com today and sign up to get access to the track information, ask questions, and meet other 4x4 Earthers. Membership is completely free.